Yes, hello. My name is E.T.C, and what I'm going to be talking about is the presence of Biafrans, West Africans as the IGBOS, and I would also use the word Idu. That is one of the one of the major empires then, interchangeably in the British Isles, as namely Scotland, England, and Wales, and also Ireland, thousands of years ago. Though would also see that that's as an aside that they've also been present throughout Europe for thousands of years, but my main focus is in England. And to look at that, we'll be talking about the major evidence, which is the Ogam Petroglyphs, or Ogam writing, which is found in parts of Ireland. I think there are over 300 in Ireland, also found in Scotland, and the Petroglyphs of West Virginia. I'm going to show the translations, and it is in the Igbo language, it's not in English. And for avoidance of doubt and for correction for most people, the word is pronounced Ogam because it's not an English word. So those who pronounce it are actually wrong. It's pronounced Ogam because it's not an English word, it's an Igbo word. Thank you. Yes, and I'd like to start by talking about a skeleton that's 7,000 years old that was discovered in Spain, and it's a complete skeleton of a male individual. And they said that the biggest surprise was to discover that this individual possessed African versions in the genes that determined the light pigmentation of the current Europeans, which indicates that they had dark skin, although we cannot know the exact shade. Now, similar to the previous skeleton which I showed, or fossil, this is well known, or to those in England, or yes, this is a Cheddar Man, which was another male fossil, which was found in God's Cave in Cheddar Gorge in Somerset. He is much older. He's estimated to be between 7 to 14,000 years old. And like the previous skeleton which was found, he also, had dark skin, though they said dark curly hair and blue eyes, but they said he also possessed the genes for light pigmentation of skin of Europeans. Well, what they are thinking is maybe it might have been, I don't know if it might have been a mutation. We don't think that is likely because for Cheddar Man, what they said is that they could see that he moved from Egypt, or the areas surrounding Egypt, to England. So most likely he was mixed. Yeah. I'm not sure if that would have been, that might have been a mutation. I think it probably was just mixed, mixed African and, something lighter. So now, Ogam, as you could see, also spelled, well, this is Ogam, as they call it. Ogam was the earliest form of writing and communication known in the British Isles and in Scandinavia, where ancient traditions hold that it was introduced by the Druids, who, according to indigenous traditions of the Isles, were black African dwarfs and magicians, equivalent of what is called in the Igbo language Wanshi. And research conducted by Maria Gumbutas has linked Ogam with old European script dating back to 5,000 BC and all that. Even though we're going to find that is actually not correct, or what we call the language of the goddess. Ogam inscriptions appear as etchings on hundreds of stone monoliths scattered throughout Ireland. And Irish scholars maintain that Ogam is much older than their native Celtic language, which is as good as saying that those who wrote Ogam lived in Ireland before the more recent ancestors of today's Irish people appeared in the land. Now, many people have tried to translate the inscriptions using the Celtic language, but without any success. said not a single genuine Ogam inscription is written in Celtic. The Celtic language did not yet exist at the time these petroglyphs were made. Now, referring to the word druid, what I would like to state here is that the word druid is a mispronunciation. The actual word is Duru Idu, which is followers of Idu, because we're going to see that those West Africans came from a kingdom called Idu. Yes, and their god was also called Idu, and they were known as the followers of Idu. So that was where that word came from, Duru Idu, which is what they were called, which now, became bastardized to Druid. No, sorry, I'd like to make a correction. I got that wrong. Their god was not called Idu. Idu was their ancestor. So that was also the name of the kingdom. It was called Idu. So they were known as Idu, followers of Idu. The followers of the ancestors. Say today, Ogam stone writing has survived in Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England as the language of magic. Some samples have also been discovered in the USA, notably in West Virginia. Dr. Barry Fell of Harvard University had studied the phenomenon of the Ogam writing. His work was very deficient and misleading, and subsequent research is proving such to have been the case. Yet the fact remains that his work set a false notion in motion that has been hard to reverse, namely that Ogam could not have been of black African origins. He said because Ogam shares the vowel, consonant, vowel structure of morphemes with, as I said, with morphemes with the Basque language, Barifel came to the conclusion that Ogam originated from Basque, a language used among native Tuaregs of the southern Sahara regions in North Africa. Of course, they had problems of trying to place Basque. They thought Basque was probably from Japan or something, which was wrong. He said, but Ido Nyland admits that no one has been able to translate one single Ogam word with or without Basque, which means that Ogam has no real affinity with the Basque language. He said Ogam might have some lexical relationship to Basque, but it is more related to the Niger-Congo family of West African languages. Yes, now I'd like to state that in this work, I would skip a lot of, there are a lot of areas I would skip, because if not, this video is going to run to, 10, 12, 20 hours, which I wouldn't want. So I'm just taking the salient points. Now, ironically, all the words transcribed by these scholars, that's scholars including, Feld and others, including Feld's own translation, easily give themselves away as belonging to the Kwa sub-family of languages. That is from the Niger-Congo group of West African languages, which includes Igbo, Yoruba, Akan, Ashanti, Edo, etc. Ogam is characterized by the vowel, consonant, vowel structure of morphemes, which happens to be the distinguishing element of Niger-Congo languages. That's the Kwa/Bantu family groups in particular. This means that in Ogam, as in Kwa-Bantu languages, words are structured in such a way. Words are structured in such a way that consonants are preceded and followed by vowels. The assumption by Barifel and other Western scholars that Basque is the only language in the world which fits this mold was a major error that hampered all their translations. Another problem was that Basque does not possess the letters C, V, Q, and Y, which occur in Ogam and in Kwa. In Igbo language, from the Kwa group of languages, C occurs as Chi, V as V, and Q as Kwa, or Q, and Y remains unchanged. So it was researcher Don Luke in an article titled African Presence in Early History of the British Isles and Scandinavia who first pointed out that Ogam might be a West African language and not North African. Now, Ogam links with Igbo language and tradition. I'm not going to go into this too much. The column writing was used in Igbo land for various circumstances, in marriage ceremonies, to determine bride price, that is Ema Ogu, that's bride price computation, in commerce, for court practices and for record keeping. It was written on walls of buildings with white chalk or charcoal, or on the sandy floor with sticks and fingers. Well, I'm not really going to go into that. Said also it was employed by initiates of the Ozo cult to indicate rank and as a means of specifying social strata. For instance, by visitors to a titled man's house. This too is it's recorded in a book called Things Fall Apart. Said this is what is left of a system that millennia ago was an organized form of writing, as noted by Greek historians and sailors who visited West Africa more than 2,000 years ago. Said in Ireland, as in Igbo land, column writing was practiced. In the British Isles, column writing was called Ogam and was executed in the form of strokes or lines, originally on sticks and later on rocks. Celtic traditions of Ireland say that Ogam means Oga Ama. Oga Ama is most likely derived from the Igbo word Ogo Ama, for in Ogam and in Igbo, Ogu means stick. Ogam writing is shaped like sticks and was originally formed using sticks. Ogo Ama in Igbo has a range of meanings connected with the act of using sticks for oath swearing, whereby the innocent person will be referred to as Ogo Ama, or Ogo Ama, that's not guilty. Ogam writing presumes a central axis, the stick called the stem, on both sides of which the lines are executed. Well, we'll see the items, 1 and 2. I'll show that later. The description of the structure of Ogam provided by its earlier users in the British Isles indicate that the script is constructed in line with the metaphor of tree climbing. So, by way of explanation, Ogam basic structure consists of a long central line called the stem, to which short straight lines are added, to the right and to the left, and across. Even in this structure, the relationship with Igbo Uku style Ichi scarification marks is unmistakable. I'm going to get to that and explain what the Ichi scarification is later. The number of lines in a cluster and their positions relative to the stem form the individual letters of the Ogam alphabet. That's C items 1 and 2. We'll see that later. For example, one line to the right of the stem stands for the letter B. One line to the left of the stem stands for the letter H. Two slanting right lines across the stem stand for the letter G. 4 slanting lines across the stem stand for the letter Z. 2 straight lines across the stem stand for the letter O, etc. See items 1, numbers 1 and 3. Vowels are determined by vertical or horizontal lines or dots across the stem. See item 1, number 4. So this is item 1 of the Ogam alphabet. So that shows the letters R, Z, N and G, which is pronounced N, and G, and then B and N, S, V, L, B, Q, C, T, D, H, I, C, U, O, and A. So this shows item 2, which I talked about above. Now, below is a list of Ogam codes transcribed from the original stone inscriptions of Ireland by Barry Fell. The ancient creators, purposely left blank spaces where vowels are supposed to be. So, the researchers had to work by, means of trial and error, to supply the vowels to fill in the blank spaces. And also included samples that after that is the transcriptions of the Horse Creek petroglyphs from West Virginia. And the Ogam, the Ogam sentences are worked on and are listed by the serial numbers by which they've been identified on the stones in the open and in the museums, as used by Fell and Edwin Island. And they had to make provisions for slight errors that may have occurred in the course of transcribing from the stones by Fell. But by doing that, they came out with phrases listed below. So the Ogam sentences are listed word by word on the top rows, indicating missing letters as they occur on the stones, while corresponding Igbo sentences are listed underneath each row. Now the transcriptions of the Ogam stones listed here are taken from the article Translating Ogam, Introduction to Linguistic Archaeology for England by Edwin Island, and was published on the internet in 1996. And it includes listings of Dr. Barry Fell's transcriptions of the Horse Creek petroglyphs of West Virginia in the USA, and we'll show that that's this item 3. That's a Silibara stone located in the Museum of Antiquities in Edinburgh, Scotland. And well, this has no serial number, but here you have the transcriptions on top, and then the word, well, what it means in Igbo, the second line. So this first one says Nti ro ete ahun uru eku ro ete ahun usa and aru oru. Now this is all in Igbo, but I would also give the translation what it means in English. So this is the next one. Now the next one now says Ishi Ako Uru also Ashi Ena Ari Ishi Ota. All these I will now read out in the coming sentence and what it means, and the way it's said. Yes, so there are two sentences in the foregoing list. That's item 3. The first sentence reads Nti ro ete ahun uru eku ro ete ahun osa. This is in the Okigwe dialect. Literal translation means or says, when the ear constructs a palm tree climbing rope, that is ete, there is gain for all. But when the spoon does the same, gluttony reigns, meaning those who are keen to learn and listen to advice ultimately become great assets to themselves and society. Not so the gluttonous. All their efforts are motivated by greed. Now the second sentence says, that's item 3. Ena aru oru ishi ako. Uru also ashe ena ari ishi ota. The literal translation means when you work hard to lay a solid foundation, the get rich quick accuse you of attempting to climb the tip of the arrow That's attempting the impossible. It's a foolish waste of time and energy. The lesson is the lasting success is a result of hard work and perseverance. One poised to succeed takes no advice from lazy people and charlatans. Now, item 4, that's the Kingobin East number 1086, and it reads, Ubi ala ade ana acho iko ugu. Nra adi ede ana. Now, the literal translation is, when farming is scarce, no one plants creeping vegetables that spread over the farmland and stifle other plants. Say that it says eczema is no body tattoo. That's the explanation. Yes, it is a disease. Lesson: in times of lack, luxury is unnecessary and survival is paramount. One who hides his ailments and pretends to be well will die in his disease. Well, they say the minor discrepancies between Ogam, Ugu at the end of the first clause, well, that's minor anyway. As in a few other instances below, we may have, occurred in the course of Biafrans transcription from the original, because there might be slight mistakes in the transcriptions from the original. Yeah. Now, item 5, the Balin Taggart Stone. That reads, Oma akwo, Kwo iyi, Imara ihe iyima. So the literal translation is this: you who claim to know the vegetation of the riverside, do you have the river's knowledge? The lesson is, literacy is not wisdom. A man's knowledge cannot compare to that of the eternal being. Yes, now archaeological dating of the Ogam inscriptions in Virginia, USA places them between 600 and 700 AD. And it's suspected that the writings were imported into the USA by early Irish missionaries because Benedictine monks of Ireland actually studied the Ogam writing system and adapted it in their teachings of the Bible. That's the book Wonderful West Virginia by Fell. I think it was published in America in March 1983. Now, Dr. Fell is reputed to have translated the West Virginia inscriptions using Basque, which we know was wrong. As noted earlier, both Fell and other scholars of his school have admitted that none of the translations they have so far done had made any kind of sense or meaning. That's by using Basque to translate them. But by contrast, you can translate them straight in, the way we've done now using Igbo, and it all makes sense and it shows exactly what they say. But due to changes made by Fell in the original script, it is hard to translate some portions of the West Virginia Petroglyphs. Well, however, staying as close as possible to the original, we've been able to translate the middle and bottom lines fully, but the top line only partially. But the top line can be summarized as follows. That's the top line. It says, Ireji aha emu, aku eji aha emu, one eme aku osa, one eme aku osa, or ocha. So I think it's, it actually missed out something there. That's why they are saying osa or ocha, but we think it's ocha, which means clean. Oba adi elia okozo ntudi. Eganu imo na idide. Eganu imo na idide. But I'll read out what that says. So the literal translation: the slanderous tongue, the wealth that finances slander, can it be called clean? The barn cannot go up in flames where there is a pile of cinders to put out the fire. No one drinks Imo, that is a major river in the eastern part of Biafra land. Yes, it said no one drinks Imo, that's a river in Igbo land, with earthworms in it. The lesson is this: those who seek equity must seek with clean hands. The evil we do unto others condemns us. Where there is a will, there is a way. The solutions to a person's problems are always around him. As the river does not carry worms, so the eternal one is beyond error. Seek and find the eternal one, that is God, and live above limitations. Yes, now we have item 8 of the Horse Creek Petroglyphs of West Virginia. And this is the middle line, and it says, Omi aga ano otu ulo ogo. And the next line reads, Omi ina atu oge ina ana obi ete. The literal reading says, Omi aga ano otu ulo ogo. Omi ina atu oge ina ana obi ete, or uta. This is in the Umuahia dialect. Sorry, the problems I'm having with the pronunciation is that there should be accents on the letters to show if the pronunciation is high or low. That way it makes it very easy to pronounce them easily, but that has not been put here. So, except it's a dialect which you speak, you have to say it twice before it makes sense, and then you get it right. Well, the literal meaning is this: a well won't last long in one house. The well that you dig in your new permanent homestead. Lesson: while digging a well, that's domestic borehole for your new permanent homestead, do not forget that a well serving only one family dries up quickly. Deeper meaning: no man is an island. Sharing is the essence of life. Life is only worthwhile while it serves the collective good. The value of the life of the individual is measured according to his service to society. Then this item 9, the Horse Creek Petroglyphs of West Virginia, this is the bottom line. And it reads, Ibu ahia ego ito, odi ire ego ole, ego oga ebu imo. The next line reads, Ode eke, ode ga ahia ofe, okilo onu ada. The literal reading is, Obuahia ego ito odi ire ego ole, ego oga ebu imo, ode eke, ode ga ahia ofe, oke ito onu ada. This is in the Ngwa dialect. There are so many different dialects that they are using here. So, the dialects, of course, the pronunciations of some words are different, But what it means, literary meaning, is seller of 3 pence worth of goods. How much will your goods fetch? Can money swallow Imo River? That is a metaphor for the sea. Can it kill a boa? Boa as in, the boa snake. Can it shop for groceries? Example, do one's chores. An old man does not vomit on his body like a newborn. Lesson: the power of money is limited to commerce. Money cannot render direct service or affect the realm of the infinite. Without human instrumentality, money is useless in the performance of actions, great or small. Age confers wisdom through experience. Those better placed than others should live by example rather than following the ignorant to do wrong. Yes, now I'm going to talk about the descendants of the Biafrans in the British Isles. Now they were scattered all over the British Isles. This is a reference that was made to them from a book by Grant Allen. It's called The Welsh in the West Country, from Gentleman's Magazine, August 1882. Now he says, thus the British, whom the Romans encountered, were made up of ingredients as greatly different from each other as are the component parts of the present population of the United States. They were at least fair whites, dark whites, and blacks. Note that, and blacks. So when the Romans came, there were blacks in the UK who were part of the population. Of the fair whites, or as they call them, Xanthocroi, the Celts formed a part. They said race names are a rather dangerous weapon to work with because a white Celt or a white Norseman might easily become swarthy, almost as a Uskar or a Dane, after repeated intermarrying with these races for some time. So yeah, generations, and yet he would politically be a Celt or a Norseman, but at any rate, the pure Celt of say 2,000 years ago was a fair white. This is held to be almost beyond question, so that the pure Celt, the pure Norseman, and the pure Belgian of a distant and not easily defined epoch were probably near kinsmen, while the swarthy Silurian or Moor or Picts and the equally swarthy Dane were much more closely related to each other than to any branch of the what they call the Santo Croix, from whom they were separated by an enormous gulf. The Celts then formed one division of the pure whites, the Moors or Picts of the pure blacks, and both were living side by side in Britain when the Romans came. That the Silures were Picts seems clear. Tacitus mentions the painted countenances and curled hair of the Silures as an argument that they were of Spanish origin, which of course they found out to be wrong because they were descendants of the Biafrans, and would show you what the so-called tattoos were. What the tattoos were is what, I'll show you that, the pictures and all that. Yes, it said, from which one may see also that the ancient Spain too was Pictish, which means what they're saying is that the ancient Spanish were also descendants of Africans. That is why they're dark-skinned. But at present, it must be remembered we have in view the question of language. I was speaking of this politically until racially divided nations. Professor Huxley says evidence may adduce to show that the language spoken by both these types of people in Britain before the Roman conquest was exclusively Celtic. But it may be said that the Gaelic words which style the language of the people black speech are so old that they antedate the coming of the Romans, by which time it is said that the Celtic aristocracy, though supposed to be numerically weak, had imposed their speech upon the whole inhabitants of Britain, black or white. So you see that. So you're telling me that the population of Britain by the time the Romans came were composed of blacks and whites. That is clear. So the blacks, well, from what we could see from, when we talked about Cheddarman, they said that the blacks, crossed into Europe 40,000 years ago. So they were the main inhabitants of Europe from 40,000 years ago. Yeah. Now, for example, we see one of the black people, the Moors of the Romans, in the person of a king of Alban of the 10th century. Now, Alban is a division, an area in Scotland. Yes, in the person of a king of Alban of the 10th century. History knows him sometimes as Kenneth, sometimes as Dob. Now, I'm going to go back and give you the explanation of what the word Dob and all those mean. Okay, and sometimes as Niger. The version of the Pictish Chronicle in the Irish Nenus calls him Cyned Vel Dob, and St. Bertrand styles him Dob of the Three Black Divisions. The Three Black Divisions means he had three areas where they're all blacks that he ruled. He said the Picts seemed to have preserved a tradition that the whole nation was once divided into 7 provinces, and it would appear that the 3 black divisions over which Dob or the Black held sway formed that portion of the original 7 which still remained untouched by the white races. In short, the Pictish provinces, the Pictish provinces, And it says he seems to have been constantly at war with Quillian, who is, or Caniculus, the young dog, who is called Fion or White by St. Berchan, and eventually White succeeded in driving Black out of the country and reigning in his stead for more than 20 years after. It said a son, however, of the dispossessed Kenneth or Dob, known to as Kenneth or Mac Dob, regained the kingship in the year 997 and reigned until, okay, let's see, so it says, the footnote says the celebrated Quillian, whose era is placed 8 centuries before this, is stated by Dr. McLaughlan to have been spoken of as an Ku, or the hound. Quillian, meaning simply the hound of Quillian, Dean of Lismore's book, page 59. I said both he and the above Coniculus were probably identified with the totem of their clan. Now, I'm going to go later into all that, so it makes it easy to know about what they're talking about. Okay, in 8. So while we stopped here, reigning until, sorry, I'll have to continue from that, until 1004. He is termed the Dun or Brown from strong Don Cath, and since Dun implies a lighter shade than Dob, being in fact Don or Tawny, it is probable that Kenneth, son of the Black, was of white blood on his mother's side, so a somewhat different race mixture is perhaps indicated in the case of Conrad Kerr, thus Black Kenneth, whose father, a Pictish king, bore the name of Eucadbuid or Yellow Hector. Another son of this king was Domnall Breach, and I'm going to tell you what Breach means, because we'll go back and show exactly what that means. This Domnall Breach is said to have succeeded his brother Swarthy Kenneth as king of the Rides in the year 629, and according to the annals of Ulster is an island, he was killed at the Battle of Carron near Falkirk in the year 642. And the introduction of his name brings us now to the consideration of the epithet Breach. Now this Breach, is pronounced Vrek. Vrek is generally rendered spotted or speckled, and in its aspirational form is pronounced Vrek. See, it offers itself very reasonably as the father of the modern freckled, but that is not true anyway, because you're going to see what it actually is. Many words have been formed from it in Gaelic, and when it is now applied to a man, it has a significance of pimply or marked with smallpox, which is not right, but you're going to find out. It said, but in its original meaning, it seems to be checkered, spotted, or carved. Now, why I underline that carved is to show you that really what it is E.T.C clarification of the IGBOS. That is what it is, because all the kings, all the noblemen, the priests who were from Muri in Igbo land, all had E.T.C clarification, and you're going to see it. So it was the same of the Danes, who you're going to find out they're called the Black Danes because they were blacks. Or they said embroidered, and out of one of these meanings has come the word vreka, a graving tool, an engraver. So now it tells you, how can a graving tool now be, smallpox or freckles or an engraver? It shows you that what it is a tool that was used for carving, and what the carvings were was E.T.C clarifications on people's faces, which I'm going to show you a picture of now. Yes, now we have a picture of a young man. If you can see the markings on his forehead, that is E.T.C clarification. This is just one example. You can see it's E.T.C clarification from Wikipedia. Yes, here we have another. Okay, well, actually what this is a bronze figurehead that was excavated from Iboku in Nigeria. Now, this is the bronze head of a pharaoh called Pharaoh Nama.
or menace. You can see the scarifications on his face. This is another example of the scarifications.